From the world headquarters of Fox News, it's The Kelly File with Megyn Kelly.
Breaking tonight, from the moment news of the attacks started coming in from Paris, reactions started coming in from the campaign trail, and it has not stopped. With Republican candidates hammering home how their approach differs from that of the Democrats.
I am angry that just yesterday morning, our president, against all evidence, declared ISIS contained and took a victory lap. ISIS is not a JV team, Mr. President. They are not contained. They are at our shores, and they measure their victory in body count.
This is a clash of civilizations. And as I said at the debate earlier this week, there is no middle ground on this. Either they win or we win.
Chris Stirewalt is our Fox News digital politics editor. He's with me now. Chris, so is there any real difference between the Republicans now on how to deal with the threat of ISIS?
Well, the question is, boots on the ground, how many? There is sort of a wing of the Republican Party that favors massive ordnance air power to obliterate the region. And then there are others who say that there needs... Well, Lindsey Graham would be more in the Jeb Bush camp, which says you got to have some boots on the ground, you got to forward deploy, you got to do these things so you can work it out. I would say that you talk to the other side that would be more in the heavy air power space. I won't characterize anybody's view for them in that case, but that's a strong vein in the Republican Party. Sort of the Curtis LeMay branch of the Republican Party says light them up.
Mm-hmm. And so how do the voters react when they hear the Republicans coming out and saying Obama, Obama, Obama? I mean, presumably GOP primary voters say, yes, right, we agree this is Obama's fault. But does it sort of help separate the wheat from the chaff when they're trying to figure out who to vote for on the GOP side?
So the migrant issue is enormous, and all of the candidates are coming to one point of view, which is at the very least, they're now where Rubio and Carson and arguably Donald Trump were originally, which is not now, at least not now, a freeze. Those who are talking about sorting out Muslims from Christians, et cetera, that will all sort itself out, and everybody will get to no more migrants. The question now is, voters change. So the politicians change as the events around them warrant, but voters change because they become more serious when the world impinges on the fantasy play of a primary election. Oh, I like Bernie Sanders. Oh, I don't know. Is it Carson? Is it Trump? Is it this? Is it that? When you have world events impinge on your primary, you start to think of things differently and more seriously.
Mm-hmm. And the last point is, we're hearing a lot about the NSA and the curtailing of that program. Opportunity for somebody like Christie, hurtful for someone like Rand Paul?
Well, insofar as either of those two candidates can still be helped or hurt, I suppose yes, but no.
Chris, great to see you.
You bet.
Well, Friday's attacks in Paris also had an immediate impact on the Democratic race, as it quickly became the focus of Saturday night's presidential debate in Des Moines, Iowa, with the candidates being asked, is America at war with radical Islam? Ed Henry is in Washington with the story. Ed?
Well, Megyn, you're absolutely right. And that shift in focus to terror should have been in the wheelhouse of the frontrunner, Hillary Clinton. Instead, she found herself on defense, with moderator John Dickerson of CBS suggesting she and President Obama repeatedly underestimated ISIS. Today, Jeb Bush, a Republican candidate, of course, declared Clinton and the rest of the Democrats in the race have no clue on national security, in part because of this exchange.
Secretary Clinton, you mentioned radical jihadists.
Yes.
Marco Rubio, also running for president, said that this attack showed, and the attack in Paris showed, that we are at war with radical Islam. Do you agree with that characterization, radical Islam?
I don't think we're at war with Islam. I don't think we're at war with all Muslims. I think we're at war with jihadists who have...
Just to interrupt, he didn't say all Muslims. He just said radical Islam. Is that a phrase you don't...
I think that you can talk about Islamists who clearly are also jihadists.
Now, a Clinton aide told me today she will not say we're at war with radical Islam because it offends Muslim countries she'll need to work with if she's elected president. And Clinton's chief rival, Democratic Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders, he agreed in the debate that using the phrase radical Islam is not important, is his words. And he doubled down on his previous claim that America's biggest security threat right now is climate change, which shows that Clinton's statements are probably not going to have a major impact on our march to the Democratic nomination, but it could bite her in a general election, Megyn.
Ed, thank you. For more on this now, we turn to Robert Zimmerman, a Hillary Clinton supporter and a Democratic National Committee member from New York. Robert, good to see you.
Good to be with you.
What of that? Because there's a fascinating piece in the Daily Beast today that argues that they are betraying their ignorance or their inability to grapple with the true nature of this enemy by not just naming it what it is, radical Islam.
It's just the opposite, Megyn. If you watch what Secretary Clinton has been saying, President Obama, they're following exactly what President George W. Bush did when he avoided at great length referring to radical Islam. Remember the
Out of a desire to do what?
Out of a desire to keep the focus on the jihadists and the terrorists. Remember the role.
And avoid stereotyping Muslims. Is that the end or result here, or avoid inflaming anger on
Here's the deal. Every ISIS and al-Qaeda terrorist has one objective: to unite the Muslim community, 1.6 billion of them, to convince them that they are at war with the United States.
And if we say we're at war with radical Islam, that's going to do that?
If we make the case that we're at war with Islam, if we slander the faith,
war with
I know what you're saying, but that's how it will be interpreted. The more important point is, instead of having this obnoxious semantics debate, let's focus on what can really be done. Why hasn't Ted Cruz stood up and supported a war resolution to go to war against ISIS?
Let me challenge you on
That's the real issue. Where's Marco Rubio on that?
It's not an obnoxious debate. It isn't. Thoughtful people, including General Jack Keane and former head of the DIA, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, have said we have to name the enemy. And their argument is that you can only understand what we're fighting by naming it adequately. General Keane makes the point that we're not even studying. If you want to study radical Islam in a university today, it's nearly impossible to do it because we don't talk about it, we don't identify it, we like to pretend it isn't there.
Megyn, the target's very clear. We've dropped thousands of bombs with our allies on the target. It is ISIS. It is al-Qaeda. And the reality here is if the Republicans running for president have any sincerity as opposed to just playing politics, they'd be advocating a war resolution against ISIS. Do you know the Republican Senate has not even confirmed the undersecretary to oversee counterterrorism activities and to oversee financial crimes, which deals with freezing the money for terrorists? That's where the real battle is, not in playing these semantic games.
You know that the intel analysts are coming out and saying that the intel they're generating showing that we're not doing very well in this fight are having their reports diminished and downplayed by this administration. That's what they say.
And very frankly, what we're seeing is the Republican candidates for president are all basically adopting the same position of President Obama.
You're not, but you're...
And that's the point.
True. You're suggesting the Republicans, they're not in a position to receive these reports. You've got the top intel analysts in the country coming out and saying he's ignoring our reports on how bad this fight is going.
First of all, by every measure, this White House is taking the fight very seriously. And in fact...
I know. It's just a setback in Paris.
No, that's the point. Let me tell you something. Even the fact checker this network uses, PolitiFact, has documented what President Obama...
That is not our fact checker.
You've been quoted many times in this network.
That's not our fact checker. Okay, that is not our fact checker.
It's been used. It won the Pulitzer Prize. They said President Obama was correct when he said that ISIS has been contained in Iraq and Syria. The real issue is how do we broaden our coalition?
The point is the suggestion that ISIS has been contained in Iraq and Syria is completely blind to what they are doing in other parts of the world.
No one's blind to it.
In Beirut, in the Russian airliner, and now in Paris. It's a myopic statement that doesn't take into account the metastasis of this deadly group.
Everyone is very conscious of that, but the way you fight it, Megyn, is by building coalitions with our allies, reaching out to moderate Muslims.
We're trying that.
And Sunni Muslims.
We've been trying that. And they're getting stronger.
But you don't do it by attacking the Muslim faith. That's what
no one's doing that.
Yes.
Radical Islam is much different than Islam, but I got to leave it at that. But I'm going to pick up this debate with my next guest.
Okay.
Great to see you, as
always. Good to be with you.
Well, when it comes to the fight against radical Islam, Ayaan Hirsi Ali has lectured on this issue for years, and it earned her a death sentence. She'll join us next.
To the degree that anyone would equate the terrible actions that took place in Paris with the views of Islam, those kinds of stereotypes are counterproductive. They're wrong.